After the session, you will be able to understand the concept of land utilization, categories, the ways in which land is used, the shift in the land use pattern in India, and the agriculture production trend, recognize how cropping pattern vary over time, and determine the impact of cropping pattern, their adjustment. The session will teach you about land usages and agriculture trends in India, especially during the post-independence era and how it changed over a period of time. The agriculture resources development, institutional structure and other factors influence the character of land usages in any economy. Furthermore, different crops are assigned to different areas for production based on the quality of the soil, people's eating pattern and the relative profitability of various crops. As a result, cropping pattern may shift over time as consumer preferences changes, relative pricing and production shift. Such adjustment, however, should be made in accordance with a country's land use plan. This refers to how land resources are utilized in distinct ecological environment in a broad sense. A country's land use pattern is determined by its physical, economic and institutional framework at any particular period. In other words, the current land use pattern in India arose as a result of action and interaction of different elements such as land physical qualities, institutional framework and the structure of other available resources such as capital, labor, etc. Furthermore, the land use pattern is influenced by the region's geographical location in respect to other factors of economic development such as transportation, industry, trade and so on. Understanding the Indian economic situation will require a detailed assessment to the current land use pattern and trend in recent years. India's entire land can be split into 5 groups in terms of land utilization. The first one is wood, second one is non-cultivable land, third is uncultivable land excluding current fallow, fourth one is fallow fields or fallow land and fifth one is cultivated land, and these are the different type of lands. Ground used for industrial and other non-agricultural purposes as well as barren and uncultivated land are example of non-cultivable land. In this category of uncultivated land, we include pasture, grazing land, trees covers and wasteland. In contrast, fallow refers to arable ground that has been left unplanted. So, the basic purpose is to increase the productivity, that is why it is left for a period of time. The cultivated land represents the net sown area. Now, please refer this particular figure and see as I described the 5 type of land use pattern. This figure shows the land use and land cover map of India for 2005. This map served as a reference for 1995 and 1985 LULC maps. So, as per the basis of land use pattern in India, I will compare the data of 1960-61 and 2002-3 for you. So, let me explain you. First category is forest. It was 18.11% in 60-61, which increased to 22.57%. The barren and wasteland, which was 12.01%, now it came down to 6.29%. Area under non-agricultural uses was 4.9%, which increased a bit to 7.92%. Permanent pasture and grazing land, which were 4.71%, that has gone down to 3.45%. Tree crops and grasses, which was 1.5%, is more or less it is same, it is 1.1%, it is decreasing, not increasing. The cultivable land waste, which was 6.23%, came down to 4.41%. Fallow and other current fallow lands, which was 3.5%, increases slightly to 3.82%. Current fallow land also from 3.73%, it increased to 7.03%. And the net sown area of India was 45.26 in 1960-61, which came down to 43.41%. Cropping pattern refers to the percentage of land covered by various crops at any given period. Cropping takes place all year in India as long as there is enough water for the crops. In India, there are two separate farming seasons. One is Kharif, which runs from July to October, and Rabi, which runs from October to March. Zaid are the crops that are grown during March through June. The crops are cultivated on the single basis in the group mixed cropping, or in a specific order like rotational cropping. One crop can be produced in one session, this is known as a monocropping, or two crops can be grown in one season, this is known as a double cropping, and can be cultivated in a year in order. We will go over different cropping systems in more details. First one, I will explain about the monoculture. So, monoculture refers to the growing of only one crop on the same plot of ground year after year. It could be due to climatological and socio-economic factors, or it could be due to farmers' expertise in cultivating a specific crop such as peanuts, coconut, or which are cultivated year after year under rain-fed condition due to rainfall limitations. I will give example of rice. Rice is produced in canal watered areas where no other crop can be grown due to soggy conditions. Multiple cropping is defined as growing two or more crops on the same piece of land in the same calendar year. It is farming intensification in both time and spatial dimensions. For example, more crops each year and more crops on the same area of the land at any given time. Intercropping, mixed cropping and sequence cropping are all examples of this technique. Double cropping occurs when a plot of land is occupied by two crops that are cultivated in succession over the course of a year. Another type is intercropping. Intercropping is the practice of cultivating two or more crops in a row arrangement on the same piece of land. For example, growing peanut with red gram at a 5:1 ratio. Another one is cropping intensity. Cropping intensity is the spatial dimension is thus achieved. Intercropping was originally used as a precaution against crop failure in a rainy climate. Intercropping's main goal right now is to increase productivity per unit area while also maintaining output stability. The intercropping strategy makes optimal use of resources and boosts productivity. The peak nutrients demands of the component crop should not occur at the same time. The component crop should have little competition for light between the component crops. There should be complementarity. Component crop maturity should be separated by at least 30 days. Now I will explain you a bit about mixed cropping. Growing two or more crops simultaneously intermingled without a row pattern is known as mixed cropping. It is a typical practice in most of India's dryland areas. Seeds from several crops are blended in a specific proportion and sowed. The goal is to provide enough cereals, pulses and vegetables for the entire household. Sequence cropping is described as cultivating two or more crops in a row on the same piece of land throughout the course of a farming year. Double, triple or quadruple cropping refers to the number of crops farmed in a year with 2, 3 or 4 crops respectively. Relay cropping and ratoon cropping are two further systems that exist in addition to ones mentioned above. Relay cropping is the practice of planting the following crop before harvesting the previous crop. After harvesting a crop, ratoon cropping or ratooning refers to the growing the crop with regrowth coming from the roots or stalks. Integrated farming system. An integrated farming system is a holistic approach of combining numerous enterprises in a harmonious manner so that they complement each other, such as cropping, dairying, poultry, fishery, beekeeping and so on. The goal is to maximize profit while utilizing resources efficiently and causing the least amount of damage to the soil and environment. The cropping pattern on a farm is determined by both meteorological circumstances and the farmer's resources. Though climate plays the most important role in crop choices, the area under cultivation is also determined by the farmer's economic factors such as irrigation, water, input cost, the output, pricing, etc. The predominant agriculture system in any given location is the product of past and present actions made by individuals, communities, the government or their agencies. Water availability either through precipitation or irrigation is a basic requirement for increased agriculture intensity. It is becoming increasingly apparent that land and water resources are infinite and that intelligent usages is very essential. This is especially true in nations like India, where population pressure is increasing all the time. Tropical countries like India are fortunate in that the weather conditions for growing crops are generally good throughout the year. It is, however, critically reliant on water supplies from natural precipitation or irrigation facilities. In many places of India, multiple cropping has been practiced for a long time. Similarly, in India, mixed cropping is an ancient art. Mixed cropping systems were implemented as a safeguard against crop failure owing to seasonal circumstances or pest and diseases assault. In recent years, it has been demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are other more benefits. The integrated agriculture system appears to be the solution to the problem of land shortage. Small-scale farmers with limited resources will see an increase in income and a better standard of nutrition as a result of this. Researchers on multiple cropping systems, on the other hand, recommended that farmers' resources be prioritized so that a mixed cropping system may be implemented technologically. Gradually, a new concept for multiple cropping have emerged and a body of useful scientific information has accumulated. The data is derived from analytical work on various crops combinations and crop growth sequence. In this regard, the country's cultivated area can be broadly classified into three types based on rainfall pattern. First one is areas with an annual rainfall of more than 1150 mm. Second category is areas with rainfall ranging from 750 to 1150 mm. And the third one is areas with less than 750 mm of precipitation. The majority of Assam, Kerala, Orissa and West Bengal can be classified as a part of the first category. The fundamental issues in these areas are limited irrigation and poor drainage. The majority of farmers cultivate rice. Large portion of Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh fall into the second category, according for roughly 1/3 of the country's total cultivated area. There is considerable potential for developing minor irrigation facilities in these areas. Additionally, the third category accounts for nearly 1/3 of cultivable land, encompassing portions of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Rajasthan. Unless major and medium irrigation facilities are provided in these areas, there is little hope of significantly increasing cropping intensity. Cropping pattern on farm are determined by both climatic factor and farmers' resources. Though climate is the most important factor in crop selection, the area under crop is also influenced by the farmers' economic considerations, specifically irrigation, water, input cost and product prices. The predominant cropping system in any locality is the cumulative result of past and present decisions made by the individual, community or government or its agencies. A fundamental requirement for increased cropping intensity is the availability of water, either precipitation or irrigation sources. It is becoming increasingly clear that land and water resources are finite and that prudent use of both is critical. This is particularly true for, as I mentioned, that it is very much relevant in context of India because of the increasing population pressure. Cropping pattern are influenced by traditional, social and dietary practices, crops that are resistant to pest and disease and are compatible with the ecological environment, the most profitable crops or those with the highest yield, the crop combinations that maximizes the profit while minimizing the cost, the cumulative effect of past and present decisions made by individual government. Land use change is responsible for nearly 25% of global emissions. It has the potential to influence the atmospheric concentration of CO2 and thus contribute to global climate change. You will be wondered to know that 3.2 billion people worldwide are impacted by land degradation. Ecosystem services that is also affected by such changes. Each year, you will be surprised to know that each year land degradation costs the global economy of $10.6 trillion in lost forest, agriculture and grassland tourism. A report analysis that was conducted by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimated this, and according to the United Nations, over 500 million hectares of new agricultural land will be required to meet global food demand by 2050. According to the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, human use affect over 70% of the all natural ice-free land on Earth, and this figure is expected to rise 90% by 2050. In India, the rapidly growing population and the resulting strain on available resources have a determinantal effect on the country's land resources. Cities are growing in size and urbanization far beyond their formal boundaries, as I said. Apart from that, encroachment on private land and extensive use of forest resources, increased food and shelter demand have necessitated expansion by encroaching on uncultivated land areas as well as forest, shrub and wetland habitat. According to the IPCC's report on the climate change and land, agricultural land for food, animal feed and fiber is driving land use changes. Besides that, overgrazing, it's a regional problem at local level. Farmers are abandoning cultivated land for grazing purposes because of which the soil fertility status that deteriorates. And as a result, we can conclude that there are two types of land use change. One is direct anthropogenic changes and another one is indirect anthropogenic changes. Deforestation, reforestation and afforestation, agriculture, urbanization are all examples of anthropogenic changes, whereas indirect changes include climate change or a change in carbon dioxide concentration, which results in change in vegetation and land use pattern. So, after discussing the concept, definition, the temporal analysis of land usages and cropping pattern in India, the different factors responsible, the different problems associated with the cropping pattern on land usages in India. Now, you may be thinking that what is the way forward? In my view, increased food productivity, improved cropland management, livestock management, agroforestry, increased soil organic carbon content and reduced post-harvest losses all contribute to ecosystem conservation and land restoration. You may be surprised to know that according to an IPCC report on land use, these all factors had been given importance. These management practices have the potential to increase the crop production by up to $1.4 trillion. Improved fire management and improved grazing land can contribute to land restoration. So, in other words, restoration of soil and water resources, conservation of soil as well as water, and a scientific management of resources are very important to improve the crop productivity, to improve the soil fertility in a region like India. And there is also an immense need not to convert the agricultural land into non-agricultural land. And for that, there is a need not only to make policies, but there should be an interrelationship between the policy makers and the grassroots level practitioners. The views of the grassroots level practitioners should be taken by the policy makers, and most important fact is that it should be implemented honestly to maintain the cropping pattern in India and also to balance the land usages in India.